Well, it's Wednesday, and you all know what that means. Today we get to review AEW Dynamite. As you know, we're heading straight to the Forbidden Door 2. A lot of things coincides with this episode of AEW Dynamite that head to that. But we're also going to review much of the recent events by All Japan Pro Wrestling with day one of the Dynamite Series tour, and we're going to get through all of that. And of course, we got some news updates to tell what's been going on in the world of pro wrestling, such as what events that the promotions are putting out, who's being booked, what matches are going to be set, who's been injured, who's going to be signed, any interest in whatever, whole enchilada. So, let's get ready for another episode of the Leaded Wrestle Zone.
Are you ready? Get up, get up! 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 Get up, get up!
Welcome everybody to the Leaded Wrestle Zone, all things that is pro wrestling with AEW, NXT, New Japan Pro Wrestling, Impact Wrestling, the National Wrestling Alliance, various promotions, wrestlers, matches, and championships. I am your host, Gerard here. So, let's begin with All Japan Pro Wrestling with the Dynamite Series 2023. This was just recently the day one that took place on June 11th. In our opening match, we have a bit of a uh, 8-man tag match. Team number one, we have Dan Tamura, Oji Shiba, Ren Ayabe, and Atsuki Aoyagi. They take on Kohei Sato, Masushi, Rising Hayato, and Ryo Inouye. Now, as this was a very interesting dynamic. Now, not much of the storyline that I've been following much as tells it, but it was a pretty good match. Not to mention some of the junior heavyweights involved in this one, but in the end, it was of course a spinning, what was it? A spinning kick by Inouye onto Tamura that allowed him to pick up the win. Now, our next match is for the AJPW television 6-man tag team titles. We have Gorgeous, Manchino, Black Tiger, and Asai number one taking on the champions, Takao and Mori, Black Story, and ATM. Now, I wasn't too much sold on this one, but in this case, Black Tiger and Black Story got in each other's faces. I thought it was interesting. There was a little bit of the comedy routine in Black Story involved. But however, the power of Takoya Inoue was the X factor that allowed him and his partners to retain the titles when he applied a big lariat onto Aizawa number one, and boom, just like that, 1, 2, 3, he's done. They retain the titles. Next match we have for the All Asia Tag Team titles in a barbed wire um, double barricade mat Megaton Convert Blast death match. So yeah, there was gonna be a lot of explosions. So we have the challengers um, Ryo Kawamura and Hikaru Sato taking on Yoshitatsu and Asushi Onita. Yes, guys, the same Onita from the documentary from Dark Side of the Ring, where they talk about FMW. So basically, he and Yoshitatsu actually teamed up. And of course, it was going to be a lot of explosions, a lot of kabooms going everywhere. But the X factor that allowed them to pick up the win, both Yoshitatsu and Onita grabbed the baseball bats that are barbed wire to be exploded, and they did that right onto who was it? Who they got? Oh yeah, onto what's his name? On Kawamura, and boom! While they took him out, it was Yoshitatsu who picked up the win, and they retained the titles. So that was a pretty good one. Next up, we have tag team action. We got Masao Hanabatake teaming up with Honda to take on Haruko Omori and, of course, Murder Grandpa himself, the King, Minoru Suzuki. Now, you know this is going to be interesting how this is going to be turning out. Of course, it was going to be exactly like I expected. So, but however, in this case, it was the Gotch style pie driver with Minoru Suzuki onto, what was his name? On Hanabatake, who picked up the win, giving the win for him and his team. Now, our next match, this is where a lot of things go on. We have Satoshi Kojima teaming up with Suwama, taking on the Saito brothers, Junior Ray, who are members of the Voodoo Murders. Now, keep in mind, those who have been following what's going on here, Suwama has been with this unit before, the Voodoo Murders, on maybe a few occasions, but recently he was kicked out due to his leadership, and it was the Saito brothers who initiated the betrayal. So now he's on the lighter side, trying to get his revenge. But this match became a total disaster because there have been two times they ended up this match in double countout. But the match was restart, tried again, but once again the countout after less than 10 minutes. The first time it was less than 2 minutes, but the second time was less. But once again, the Saito brothers tried to put Suwama in a body bag, and that kind of put it in that perspective. But you know, Suwama will try to get revenge on the Saito brothers and the rest of the Voodoo Murders for betraying him. Next up, we have Yuma Aogi taking on Manabu Soya. Now, this is a very interesting matchup. Now, Yuma Aogi is one of the most rising stars coming into the heavyweight division in All Japan, taking on Manabu Soya. Now, Manabu Soya was only here is because, as you know, he and Kenoh are the current tag team champions, which they grabbed the titles, and of course, Yogi and his tag partner Miyahara are trying to regain them and take them back away from Congo. But however, in this case, it was a spinning brain buster or something like that that allowed for Yogi to pick up the win, and boom, just like that. However, Kenoh does a little promo, talk about certain things. Kenoh always been opinionated about certain things when it comes to other promotions such as DDT, All Japan, but of course, Miyamura was going to try to put him in his place. So we'll see what happens then. However, Kento was already in the ring getting to meet with Yuma Azai to take on Yutaka Yoshi and Yuji Nagata. This was going to be one of those matches where, of course, it was going to be interesting because, as you know, Yuma Azai has issued the challenge against Yuji Nagata, who is the current Triple Crown champion in All Japan. But it was, of course, Anzai who picked up the win when he applied a German suplex onto Nagata's tag team partner, giving him the win. And of course, there was a promo by Kento. I'm not sure if he's swearing that he's going to regain the All Japan tag team titles from Congo, but we'll see what happens then. I think that's pretty much it for this particular show with All Japan. Let's move on with AEW Dynamite. All right, AEW Dynamite. As I said before, we're now heading straight to Forbidden Door, which is an event that we all been anticipated for almost a year. We had a feeling it was going to happen, but the obvious question was since the very beginning, what matches do we expect? Now, keep in mind, two matches have been announced since then. The first one, of course, was going to be Kenny Omega defending the IWGP United States title against Will Ospreay, who Will Ospreay lost that title to Kenny Omega early this year back in January at Wrestle Kingdom. And now he's back for revenge to bring back the title where it rightfully belongs. But the second match that was announced was, of course, was Brian Danielson issuing a challenge towards Kaguchika Okada. So that's going to be a much interesting match to see as well. But the obvious question does tell what was going to take place. Now, I'm going to jump ahead on this one because since we talked about the Forbidden Door, during a press conference or somewhat that took place in New Japan Pro Wrestling, Sonata, on the other hand, has said that he had something in mind for Forbidden Door. Now, I couldn't tell what it was, but I've had a feeling that this was a very interesting what he was planning to do. So he said that he's issuing an open challenge for the IWGP World Heavyweight title. So the obvious question was, who was going to step up to the plate? That is the obvious thing. Now, some people are now. I'm going to skip ahead on this one too. Who responded to the challenge? Now, this was a very interesting one too. Um, People are saying, "Nah, this shouldn't be happening." The person who responded was Jungle Boy. This happened during an interview with him and Hook, or with Rene Paquette. Jungle Boy said that he feels like a bit envious that Hook has the FTW title. He wants to have one of his own. So he said that he is accepting Sonata's challenge at Forbidden Door. But he did ask Hook, since he is his tag partner and best friend, if he can be by his side as a second. And of course, Hook says yes without, saying a word. Hook is always silent. He is his own man. So, you guys tell me what you think. You think it was the right choice to have Jungle Boy? I would have thought someone else, like maybe, let's see, who would I thought would have challenged Sonata for the title? Well, I kind of thought maybe Hangman. I'm not sure. I know but I'm sure that's going to be a little difficult. Maybe Ricky Starks. I'm not sure, but we'll see. Now, our opening match is, of course, in a eliminator match, between MJF and Adam Cole. Now, if Adam Cole defeats MJF, then he gets an opportunity for the AEW World title. This match was so amazing, great opener. I thought it was crazy. But the one thing that was interesting is, of course, when MJF that he thought he had everything under control, thinking that I don't need to face Adam Cole. He's a piece of garbage. Well, Adam Cole, who's resilient, did not stop him, but he was able to overcome it. However, there was a best moment ever when what's his name, Bryce Rinsberg, he was seems like he was blinded or knocked out. MJF tried to pull an Eddie, but when he thought he had it covered, Bryce Rinsberg collapsed, and you can hear the people saying, "You fucked up." Basically, he messed up, knowing that his little stunt to do an Eddie did not work. But of course, Adam Cole whacked uh, MJF with the belt, but it did not work. But in this case, this match ended in a time limit draw when we thought this match was over. However, Adam Cole said he wants 5 more minutes, but MJF has no intent. He's always trying to say, nope, it's never going to happen. So that's how it goes. Now, as you know, Sammy Guevara, we haven't seen him for quite some time. Since the Double or Nothing main event that took place, he talks about, of course, he and his wife, Time Mello, announced that they were pregnant, and they announced the gender of their child. It's a girl. So he talks about that a little bit, and then of course he talks about how things um, have been for him. Like he's saying that some things have to change until he comes out with. Then here comes Darby Allin to give him the thought. Now he was talking about certain things like you haven't been around the JSA for a long time, because he's telling him you've been under their shadow for this far long. And of course, he tells him, look, I don't need an answer, but you have to give an answer when it's the appropriate time. But Jericho, who's been recently not been looking at this more like, what's been going on, Sammy? All this and that. But of course, they've been going back and forth. But later, here comes Sting to deal with this. But of course, a lot of people have talked about this. Fightful Select reported that Jericho has no interest in coming face to face with Sting. But this is more like it just did. We just don't know what it is. But Jericho, on the other hand, his point across is he wants answers from Sammy. It's more like, is he in or is he out? So we'll see. Now, our next match, we have the Mogul Embassy, consistent of Bishop Khan, Teo Leona, Brian Cage, and Sting. And Swerve Strickland taking on Darby Allin, Sting, Orange Cassidy and Keith Lee. Now, Brian Cage was try to get under the skin of Sting by dressing up like him and all that, but that didn't work. They even tried to in, encapsulate Keith Lee, which did not work 100%, but Keith Lee continued on. But the best moment is Sting tried to apply the Scorpion Death Drop, but Cage actually countered it. But it was the Orange Punch by Orange Cassidy that gave Sting the momentum he needed to reapply the Scorpion Death Drop, and it ends right there. So that was a pretty good match. Now, the obvious question took place last week when it came to what happened with the Ass Boys. We're talking about Austin and Colton Gunn when they attack Ricky Starks. They said, "We don't know what you're talking about. Like we wanted the answers. Are they involved with Bullet Club Gold?" But they decided to deny that they don't know what people are talking about. But the one thing that they have in mind is to they issued a challenge against the Hardys because they felt that they are the true real brothers of AEW. So we'll hear from what the Hardys have to say. Now, our next match, we have the TNT title on the line. We have Wardlow taking on Jake Hager. Now, these two guys go a long way. If you guys remember, this is their time when Wardlow was a member of the Pinnacle and Jake Hager of the what was the faction again? Inner Circle. That dates back to them. But however, it was of course Wardlow with the Powerbomb Symphony that allowed him to pick up the win. He did two of them and it was done. However, when everything was going smoothly, Christian Cage and Luchasaurus showed up, but later they attacked and made Arn Anderson bleed, and Wardlow rushed to find him. So Christian Cage took it a little too far. So we'll see what happens till then. Now, speaking of the Forbidden Door, Hiroshi Tanahashi surprised everyone and he said that he issued a challenge against MJF at the Forbidden Door for the AEW World Title. However, Rene Paquette went to talk to him, telling him what happened, but MJF he has no reasons. He's saying that Tony Khan he's not going to do what he says, but unfortunately, it's going to happen whether MJF likes it or not. Now, Rene Paquette does another interview with Orange Cassidy. Talk about what's next for him. He knows that he has challengers coming left and right, and one person that came up and he mentioned his name during the media scrum at Double or Nothing, and that person is Zack Sabre Jr. So basically, there's that. So he's issuing the challenge for the international title. However, Daniel Garcia goes out again saying that he's going to be double champion once he beats Shibata. But, of course, he wants to face off against Orange Cassidy for his title. But they ask where Shibata is. Shibata's not here, but he will be here next week. But he was like, but he tells him, how about this? You two team up to take on Shibata and me. So, see you next week. But, of course, Daniel Garcia tried to suck up to Zack Sabre Jr., but, Zack, he's not an easy guy you want to that he can get along with anybody, even if you think you can. But no. So it's like, too bad. Now, our next match is the AEW Women's Championship between Sky Blue, who was the number one contender, taking on Toni Storm. But in the process, Sky Blue's mom was right there, but they later sprayed the thing on her back. But of course, like always, they always the Outcasts tried to cheat their way through one last time when they applied the spray, but of course it was a Texas Cloverleaf by Toni Storm that allowed her to retain the title while Sky Blue tapped. But however, Ruby Soho and Toni Storm decided to give another beatdown to Sky Blue, but the current New Japan Strong Women's Champion show up to even the odds. So we'll see what happens till then. Now, our main event is the Blackpool Combat Club versus the Elite, more specifically the Hung Bucks, Hangman, and of course the Young Bucks. They thought this match was pretty great. It was interesting, and of course it was a lot more different than we said. Now we know that the Blackpool Combat Club have been at war with the Elite, claiming that they are not the Elite, that they're nothing but amateurs. But this is but apparently the amateurs, as they claim that they lost, when Wheeler Yuta was taken out with the buckshot lariat thanks to Hangman. But however, the BCC decided to give the Elite a beatdown at the end of the match. Then Kingston showed up, who has unfinished business with with Claudio, and all this and that. So there's a lot of confusion about Eddie. Now we know that he and Moxley are very tight, but Eddie hates Claudio, and they try to subdue him and all this. And then out of the state of confusion, here comes Konosuke Takeshita, attacks the Bucks, and then Kenny attacks him and then gives him the V trigger until an unexpected visitor showed up, Will Ospreay, who still has some unfinished business, and this time he gets his little payback against Kenny for what happened at Wrestle Kingdom. Even though Kenny mentioned in a video package that there's no way he's going to lose against Will Ospreay because he never loses. But we'll see what happens then until we head to Forbidden Door. And I think this ending was so epic because it got all chaotic. So the obvious question goes, where do we go from here until next week? But it was foretold for Rampage that Will Ospreay will be in action. So we'll see what happens till then. I think it's time for some news updates. All right, welcome to our news update. So this is what we have for all of you. Now, I did mention a while back that, of course, Impact Wrestling it will do a show in Atlanta, Georgia, called Summer Swizzle, and Leo Rush has been announced for this particular show. That will take place for 2 days on the 23rd and 24th of this month. Now, however, certain talent from Impact Wrestling has announced their participation rather than Impact announcing it. But there's one name that don't reckon that I've ever seen him in Impact Wrestling. We have Sammy Callahan has announced he's in it. A guy named Jack Price. I don't know who he is. The Death Dolls will be there. Gio Miller. Shogun, who I have seen before. The ABC will be there. And Yuya Uemura. So I'm sure there'll be more talent that'll be announced for this particular show. So we'll see what happens then. Now for our West Coast Pro updates coming up, we have the Cruise Summer event that takes place on the 8th of July. Marvelous Talent Maria will be coming to the States one last time, but this time she'll bring her tag partner Riko Kawahara, who is a freelancer. They take on Johnny Robbie and Nicole Savoy, so I think that's going to be a good match. The West Coast Cup that will take place on the 10th and 11th of August. They announced that Shigeru Irie will be involved in this one. Now, for some AEW updates, it was announced that Jimmy Jacobs is now signed with AEW as a producer. Now, we have seen him recently in Impact Wrestling doing interviews with Nick Aldis. I don't know what was the purpose of that. That is still remain unclear to me. No official reports came in through anywhere about what was the reasons, but I'm sure that day will come when it's perfectly. Now, speaking who they sign up, they even sign EJ Nduka to be in AEW. We know that he has been in AEW Dark, but his debut is still undetermined until we get to that day. House of Glories for the Plata o Plomo event on the 16th of this month. Mike Bailey will be in action to take on Nolo Kitano. Now, GCW for the Thank Me Later event later on this month on the 17th. Cole Raddick will be in action to take on Starboy Charlie. Now, interesting things happen in CMLL. Now, it was announced that Banteria Del Ring Jr. has no longer will be using that name. Apparently, they're giving him the mantle of Máscara Dorada that normally is played by none other than Metalik. So that's kind of interesting. Now, you're probably saying why they're giving him it. Now, this is something that's been done before on various occasions from both CML and AAA. But this name was presented to him by his father, who also goes by the name Bateria del Ring. So that's kind of interesting to hear. So we'll see what happens then. We know that Máscara Dorada, he's not with CML. We know he's been appearing in various promotions, but we'll see. Now, WWE has announced that they have an interest in Hook. Now, we don't know the extent of Hook's contract. We know he's a very talented wrestler. We like what he can do, not to mention his silence that gives him like who he is, but we don't know much. If WWE are interested, they see some potential in him. Now, Fightful Select reports that Eric Bischoff believes that MJF is smart enough to move to the WWE main roster. Now, we know there's been talk about MJF possibly going to WWE, but we'll see when that happens because his contract expires next year. Now, I did mention not too long ago that Nyla Rose will be making her debut in Tokyo Pro Wrestling for Summer Sun Princess. That will take place on the 8th. However, it was now announced that her opponent is none other than Miyu Watanabe. I have to say that's going to be a good match, but many fans I saw on Twitter saying they hope that she applies the giant swing, and hopefully she does because we know she's impressive when it comes to with her physical strength for her size. So we'll see what happens then. Circle 6 is announced for the Clean My Wounds event that will take place on the 24th of this month of June. Akira will be making his debut. Now, since I talked about All Japan Pro Wrestling recently, Kenoh has made a very interesting thing that he wants to do. He said he wants to move the jurisdiction of the TJPW tag team titles to Noah. Now, Kenoh has opinions that he makes about pro wrestling in certain aspects. He did mention not too long ago that he believes that All Japan Pro Wrestling will go out of business. We know that All Japan has struggled a lot because they suffered with the exoduses. This is a topic that I haven't gone around to do again. I was planning to do it, but we'll get to that at some point. But yeah. Now, as you all know, recently I've been talking about talent that will be making their way to reality of wrestling. Booker T's promotion and wrestling school for the Summer of Champions 9. It was announced that Jacob Fatu will be making their way. Now, finally, our last update here. Now, if you guys remember clearly, during a Gambari Pro event, since we have the Wrestle Sekigahara event taking place in July, Yuna Manaze has announced that Riara will be in action, but however, since Manaze is unable to compete due to the injury, she was approached by one of her students to take her on. They'll take place in Wrestle's Gihara, and that is, of course, Unagi. However, Unagi has something in store for her by the end of this month during a Ganbare Pro event. This will take place on the 30th. She said that she's going to have a mystery opponent that she'll be facing, and the opponent she chose is none other than the current Diana World Champion, Aruka Musaki. Now, Musaki told Unagi, I'm not your henchman. Well, I don't think she looks at her as a henchman. She just thinks maybe you have the proper way to show her what you got. So we'll see what happens then until then. But for now, this is what we have for all of our updates in pro wrestling. And I think it's to call it a day. Well, I hope everybody enjoys this episode coming up since it's Thursday. We have, of course, the MLW show to review, see what's happening. And then, of course, we have Impact Wrestling and Ring of Honor. So I can't wait to do all of that. And if there's just any new updates that we're going to be doing, well, we'll see about that. Also, I will be doing another Unagi Sayaka watch real soon. And I want to apologize to people since I mentioned I was going to AEW. I haven't yet to do the video, but I'll do that as soon as possible. I think that's pretty much it what we have. So until then, I'll see you guys in the next DWZ time. Same DWZ channel. I must bid all of you adieu. So, goodbye. And have a nice day. Bang.